I like to see it as like an injured bear that just sort of limps in and just demands attention and starts whining in the corner, and it won't go away until you've given it enough attention. It turns up uninvited and it leaves whenever it wants as well.
It made a difference to like my friends, because when everyone was going out, so-called normally, I would be very excited and I might even get all dressed up to go out, looking forward to it, and then I'd just feel really, really anxious or really low and really scared, and then I'd get straight back into bed.
I hope that anyone in this situation has one person in their life who just won't leave, because often the social repercussions of telling someone you're depressed are giant, and they will just go and leave and say, oh, I can't be dealing with your negativity.
Welcome to the Solutions Project from BBC 5 Live with Calum Macdonald, where we step back from the endless stream of problems we see in our news feeds and offer solutions to some of the issues facing us every day. In episode 4, as part of 5 Live's State of Mind season, we ask, how can I help my friend who's living with depression? Right across the world, depression is the single biggest mental health problem. That's according to a study published in the Lancet Medical Journal in 2013. The Office of National Statistics says around 1 in 5 people in the UK show symptoms of depression or anxiety, and it's the third most common reason for seeing a GP in this country. So, if it's not you, it's definitely someone you know. Thankfully, we're getting better at talking to each other about depression, and if, like me, you've friends who've shared with you, you might be familiar with that sudden, daunting feeling of what to do next. Frantically Googling, reading articles and overthinking are probably my go-to solutions. But today, we'll find out about some more practical ways to help our friends. As well as experts, we'll chat to Abby Mitchell, who uses her own experience to help others, and we'll speak to the YouTube stars Emma Blackery and Luke Cupforth, who've spoken publicly about living with depression.
We all talk about depression like we talk about other words in our normal everyday language without truly understanding what clinical depression is.
This is Linda Blair, a clinical psychologist.
Clinical depression is more than a passing mood. You have to have symptoms that last over 2 weeks. So you need as many as possible, I'm afraid I have to say, of the following symptoms. A sense of hopelessness, feeling that nothing's going to get better, feeling low and tearful almost all the time, having some sort of sleep disturbance. Now, that isn't necessarily unable to sleep. It may be unable to wake up. Having some sort of eating disturbance. And again, that isn't necessarily not caring about food, but it may be overeating all the time. Some of the other less common symptoms are suicide ideation, that is, thinking that it's so not worth going on that I'm going to take my life. Being out of energy, utterly fatigued at all times. So those are the collection of symptoms of which you need a number for a duration to be depressed.
So that's how the professionals diagnose depression. Here's 27-year-old Abby Mitchell, who's lived with depression since she was a teenager. How would you describe depression, Abby? What is it?
It's just a really horrible, dark thing, really. It's like a shadow that's cast. Well, I describe it like a shadow that can be cast over your life. I kind of do think, I do live with ongoing depression and anxiety, but I manage it week to week, and sometimes it's worse, sometimes it's a bit more manageable. But it's just feeling really, really heavy, really low thoughts that you have to challenge all the time if you've got the energy to do so, because sometimes it takes over, and you want to be positive, and people are like, oh, come on, you've got this to look forward to, and it's like, I'm trying, no one wants to live that way. So it's just a really heavy, dark spell in a way.
The Mental Health Foundation says that half of those who have depression will only experience it once, but for the other half, it'll happen again. Depression is as varied and complicated as the people living with it, and so there are no neat answers here and no quick fixes. What we do have, though, is a range of ideas we can all hopefully learn from, and I think actually, in some cases, be quite reassured by. In fact, our suggested solutions today might surprise you as much as they've surprised me. I'm an overthinker, and sometimes I overcomplicate things that might actually be surprisingly straightforward. Also, details of organisations offering information and support with mental health are available at bbc.co.uk/actionline, or you can call for free at any time to hear recorded information on 08000 564 756.
At 14, you're not open with your parents about everything that's going on in your life. You're just not. And maybe some people are, but I very much hide a lot of the things I'm going through with my parents. They didn't know I was going through this until they found me drunk and collapsed in a park with scars up my arm at the age of 15, 16 years old, maybe 17. And so I was sort of going through this for years with them having no idea. And that's probably, that's not their fault. If they're listening, this is not your fault. But yeah, it's having friends beside you and then having them taken away from you is incredibly difficult. As you become depressed, you often push away without meaning to the closest people in your life.
Hello. I came home this week to
Luke Cupforth has nearly 600,000 subscribers on YouTube and speaks really openly about living with depression.
Okay, you can go now.
Why do you think that happens? Why do you push people away?
I don't think you mean to. I think that you feel, for me at least, I think I always felt really guilty that I was being this way. I felt like a downer on their life. But also, people have short attention spans and they don't want to be surrounded by negativity all the time. And if you're constantly going, oh, I'm really sad today. Oh, I can't get anything done. Oh, this is rubbish. Then people they kind of push you away. They kind of push you out. And that's not their fault. That's the way a lot of humans work. And luckily, there are some wonderful human beings in the world who don't do that. But the majority of people have a very short tether. And they have this very close mindset of, oh, that guy's a bit of a downer. Let's just not hang with him anymore.
Yeah. Is it actually more helpful then for friends to not go away, to get stuck in, to still be there? Is that helpful if somebody is kind of almost to the point of being annoying, not going away? They're still there for you. How does that, do you know what I mean? How does that balance actually work?
100%. For me, at least, look, when I'm feeling like this, and I still get a lot of times like this, I will often go, no, I'm fine, just leave me alone. But what I really secretly, in my secret brain, want is I want that friend who comes over and just goes, no, I'm staying here, I'm helping you get your stuff done. Because then I will feel so much better when I've got these things out of the way and out of my brain that I can't force myself to do, and someone else can force me to do them. That may not be true for everybody, but for me, even though I outwardly don't seem like I want the attention from people, inwardly it makes me feel like, oh, someone cares and someone's there. And actually often I want people to appear like they're caring and appear like they want to get involved, even though I don't allow them to. Does that make any sense? That sounds like such a arrogant, self-centered, care about me even though I'm telling you not to care about me. But often when I feel like this and when I'm down, it very much feels like nobody cares. And actually, if I go, no, I'm fine, and then people go, okay, and leave, I go, oh, okay, they didn't actually, oh. And actually, I have several friends in my life who do just come round to my house and go, no, I'm not listening to you. I'm helping you do this thing. I'm going to tidy your room with you. I'm going to force you to write this thing, and I'm going to make you film this thing. And by doing that, I finish the day and I'm like, thank you so much, because I needed that. Yeah. But at the time, I'm pushing them out. And the greatest friends that I have will look through that and see past it.
That's really interesting, actually, yeah. And I think, quite a good encouragement, actually, for people who might be in this situation, who are asking the question, how do I help my friend who's got depression? And actually being there is quite a big part of that.
Yeah, for me, how do I help my friend who's got depression is ignore everything your friend says, because they don't know what's best for them often. This may not be true for everybody, I'm going to preface with that, but for me, I never know what's best for me when I'm in that state. And actually, other people generally do. Be there for everything they can possibly want and more. I know that's the hardest thing in the world, and I know it's exhausting, and I know we're asking too much of you often to ignore us and keep going, pushing at us all the time. But for me, having that one friend who just doesn't take no for an answer and continues pushing on and making me do stuff and making me work and helping me get through that, they're the greatest friends I can have.
Let's hear from Abby Mitchell again, who had different groups of friends who reacted pretty differently when they found out she had depression. How would your friends sort of react when you perhaps even made plans and then would sort of pull out at the last minute? Would they accept that? Would they question it?
I had some that knew about my depression. So from 19 I was diagnosed, but before that I had some that I had confided in and that were supportive, but I had others that I think felt like it was a bit of a letdown because they didn't quite understand it. I didn't fully understand it, and I was upset with myself, and then that kind of adds to the guilt and can make the depression worse sometimes.
How did that sort of those two groups, if you like, of friends compare, the supportive ones versus the ones who would kind of see it as a bit of a letdown? How would they kind of deal with you, I suppose, and interact with you? I
think the friends that were different, they never kind of gave up on me, and they kept inviting me to things even if they knew that there was a chance I might not be able to make it. They really listened to me when I did open up, or they gave me a chance to open up, and they actually asked me, if everything was all right, rather than just seeing it automatically as a letdown. And that's sad for them that they're not going to see me, whereas other people were concerned about me and what's going on. And really spent that time to try and find out how they could help, or if I wanted to talk, which not many people had done really. When you say things like they really listened, can you talk me through what that looks like? It's something we hear a lot of, just be there, just listen to your friends. But for somebody who's got friends who are ready to listen, what does that look like? What does it feel like when that's happening? Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of the fact that I was thinking when, what to say when people say, how can you help? And everyone says, listen. But I think there's a real difference with actively listening to someone and letting them speak. I think often we're quite focused on how we're going to respond, or we want to respond with advice. And that's not always what we need. I just needed the chance to talk about the reality of what was going through in my head, because I was never given that safe space to do so. Someone would always try and add a comment like, oh, it will get better, and, chin up, when it wasn't helpful. It was like they needed to speak, but actually they hadn't taken the time to listen to what I was going through. So yeah, sometimes it's just letting that other person speak, rather than always trying to give advice. And sometimes people think that they know what would be best because it might be best for them, but they're not actually listening to the person with depression and what works for them. And it's the other thing I think I kind of picked up from your supportive friends was that they seemed to not go away. They were always there. They were kind of asking if you still wanted to do things. And I suppose one thing that comes into my mind, and has done several times actually in the course of doing this programme, is finding that balance between being there and just being annoying. But do you think there is a balancing act there, or were you really quite glad that they were sticking around? I can actually kind of relate to that, to be honest. I remember one friend every day was like, how are you? And I was like, I haven't changed much, but part of me was like, that's really sweet. She's really concerned. Not that it's sweet to be concerned, but she was just touching base with me. But I think I'd probably have rathered that than, nothing at all. But there is a balance about giving someone space. So sometimes I will need a bit of space, but I'm quite good. I'm quite self-aware, so I'm able to tell people my needs. Whereas I think when you first experience depression, you might be self-aware, but the chances are you might not know what you need. And that can be hard for both of you, someone that has depression and someone that's supporting depression. So it's really important to keep an open mind. I think what we heard from Luke and Abby there were several ideas. First, stay there with your friend, but make sure you're giving them room and time for themselves. And let's stay with that one for a bit, because there's good evidence that friends sticking around can make a difference, as Dr. Antonis Kasoulas from the Mental Health Foundation told me.
We know that depression can be quite an isolating condition, and in fact we know that loneliness is as toxic for your health as smoking. So we shouldn't leave our friends alone, and I think there's a lot of good evidence that shows that support from peers, support from families, and support from in general friends in the community and neighbors can help a person with depression to recover more quickly and also to sustain their recovery. The more years you spend being lonely and being isolated from connections and having meaningful connections, the more it impacts on your mental health, which can in turn lead to depression or exacerbate your depression.
This idea that friends are valuable, how do we know that? What was the research? Can you just explain a little bit about what was done and how it was carried out?
Sure. It's mostly, as things usually happen in public health and in public mental health, it was mostly done through observational research in the community, in the real world. And we had people that supported friends, and we then had people with depression that did not have an active social network or did not have any, maybe as well, they didn't have an active employment, so they didn't have any social connections. And we see that the outcomes in terms of their health for the people who are more well connected are actually better than the ones that are not connected at all. There's a big argument around having a friend both at difficult times, so both when someone is feeling particularly down, because a friend can check in, they can help, they can even take them to go to the doctors with them. Whereas if someone lives alone, they don't rely on any contacts, they don't have any social networks that are active, they become even more isolated, and then they experience the symptoms of depression even worse.
Also, friends can help someone to get a medical diagnosis. Here's GP Faraz Mughal.
Friends are most commonly the best people to realise when someone's mood may be changing. If they realise that mood has persisted, which is not normal for that person, for more than a couple of weeks, then it's really helpful if they could support their friend in getting some proper medical attention, whether that's at their GP or through a different service.
This is the Solutions Project from BBC 5 Live. On this episode, as part of 5 Live's State of Mind season, we're asking, how can I help my friend who's living with depression? And we'd love to hear what your own personal solutions have been. How have you helped your friends, or how have they helped you through depression? We're on email, thesolutionsproject@bbc.co.uk, and we'll share your suggestions on next week's episode. We heard one thought from Abby and Luke, that we should stick around, particularly if it gets difficult. The second solution that came up is one that may sound familiar, that we should try to listen. But what does listening really mean? Here's our clinical psychologist, Linda Blair again.
It's listening well.
Yeah.
Really hard to do, especially when nothing much is coming back to you. There's nothing much to listen to. We get really anxious when things are silent. And one of the greatest phrases I learned in my training was the power of silence. Gently to just be there. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to bombard them with questions. You can try asking questions. You can, if you feel it's appropriate, you can tell them what you've been doing and look in their face for their reaction. But the important thing is to gauge them, not be afraid of silence that you may share, and just show your warmth.
Because there's a chance people will find their own individual solutions. Here's Emma Blackery, a YouTuber with more than 1 million subscribers and author of Feel Good 101, explaining what helps her. I was interested as well to find out that there was a lyric, I think, from the White Stripes, "Fell in love with a girl," that perhaps has helped you over time. Can you tell me about that? What was it, and what effect did it have on you?
I'm glad somebody recognised that was a White Stripes lyric. You might be the first person to ever know that. Sorry, I'm really happy about that.
No, that's all right.
The lyric is, "I must be fine because my heart's still beating." That has taken me out of an anxiety attack before. That has got me through some times, that lyric. You know, I'm gonna have to get it tattooed on me somewhere or something. You know, it's a very powerful lyric that I'm not really sure much thought really massively went into. I don't know, maybe it did, but it has a deeper meaning, and it's very true. Like, so long as you are alive, you're gonna be okay. You know, and obviously that's very blasé. I don't know everyone's situation. Listening, you know, you might be thinking, well, I can't see it getting better. But the way that it helps me is just I remember that I am alive, I am healthy, I have a roof over my head, I'm able to eat, you know, I have, you know, I'm able-bodied, you know. And it very much helps me through sometimes.
Yeah.
I love that someone knew that lyric. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
Oh, I'm so happy now.
Good. I'm glad. And you don't have to fix everything. Here's Stephen Buckley from the mental health charity Mind. Sometimes you do feel a bit helpless because you don't have any experience to build on or to sort of give advice from, and you do feel that kind of helpless, oh my goodness, what should I do?
You don't need to be an expert, Callum, to have that conversation about mental health. There are some just simple things that are about being a good friend, I guess. So, for example, you can encourage people to get help. You can talk to them about their mental health. I think it's really important that you don't try and blame the individual for what they're going through or what they're experiencing. You know, it's very likely that someone who is depressed, for example, is already blaming themselves for lots of things. So try not to make that worse. Being patient, I think, is really important as well. Reminding yourself that your friend is an individual in their own right, and they need to come to their own decisions about how they get help and if they need help. So there are just basic friendship things that can be really helpful.
It's interesting what you say there about things not to do as well. Are there other things that we should add to that list? Kind of not blaming people. Are there other things we should take away?
I think there is one thing to bear in mind is if you are supporting a friend with a mental health problem, recognising the limits to the support you are able to offer them. That help can be as being as a friend. It can perhaps be offering them a little bit of emotional support. It can be offering people practical support. But you can't make decisions for them, and you can't make someone get help if they don't really want to. So recognise the limits to what you are able to do. And also don't forget to look after yourself. You know, it can be quite demanding, or it can be quite draining if you're supporting a friend with a mental health problem. So don't forget to take time for yourself, get some breaks, and don't take too much on to yourself.
Like several others, our GP, Faraz Mughal, offered one last possible solution for us when we're trying to help our friends living with depression. Do what you can to keep them active.
So once depression is established, encouraging physical activity, whether that's together with your friend or just encouraging exercise classes or long walks and so forth, and also a good healthy dietary intake. There are lots of good foods that are nutritious and that can help improve a person's state of mind.
There's a much more open conversation about depression in 2017 than there once was, but as the stigma lifts, we're also becoming more isolated. A survey of 5,000 people carried out last year by YouGov found 1 in 8 of us have no close friends at all. That's up from 1 in 10 in 2014. So while we've become more willing to tell people about our depression, we probably have fewer people to tell. So if someone does tell you they're living with depression, what I think I've learnt this week is helping them isn't something you should overthink or something you should try to get good at. Talking to experts and people with real life experience, I think it's about 3 simple things: staying in there, listening properly, and where appropriate, helping your friend stay active. Lots of us are wary of doing any of this, but we should, because there's strong evidence that just being a friend, more or less as you've always been a friend, really can make a difference. Details of organisations offering information and support with mental health are available at bbc.co.uk/actionline, or you can call for free at any time to hear recorded information on 08000 564 756. Just before we go, our clinical psychologist Linda Blair's got a really good way of putting overthinkers, like me, at ease. She says, basically, stop overthinking. Can I pick up on that idea as well of things that we shouldn't do as friends in this circumstance as well?
Just to treat them as another equal person that you really care about is better than thinking about what not to do. I always think, when you say, what should you not do, it's a bit like saying, which I often do this with my patients, I'll say, all right, for just a minute, I don't want you to think about elephants. Don't do it. And you know what happened? It's happening to you, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, if I said to you instead, what I want you to do now is think about zebras. Get a whole herd. Have you got a herd of them?
Yeah.
A lot of zebras?
Yeah.
Where are the elephants? So instead of what shouldn't I do, what should I do? I should just be here. I should care. I do care.
That's the Solutions Project, Episode 4. Bye for now.
Yeah.